Man crates. Awesome gifts for men in real wooden crates, wrapped in a cocoon of duct tape, or housed in ammo cans that are virtually indestructible. Some gifts he'll get to assemble himself. Some gifts you'll beg him to share. And some gifts are sealed inside layers of rock-solid concrete. Gifts guys love, from grilling gear to old-school video games and more. Man crates. Awesome gifts for men.
Hey folks, welcome into the Cam Rogers Show on this Wednesday morning, a 2-hour edition. It's an exciting day. Happy National Signing Day. Ladies and gentlemen, we are tracking all of the big-time announcements this morning. A lot of announcements to get to throughout the hour. I will be bringing you live look-ins, analysis, insight from all of our experts here at Chat Sports. James Yoder, the college football insider, will be coming on within the hour to talk about the top 25 rankings as we stand, and of course it's a fluid situation as we go throughout the day. Tom Downey will join me in the second hour to go through the conference rankings. Folks, I am Cam Rogers. We thank you for tuning into this live program as I take you up until 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. A very fun show on tap for you. Check me out on Twitter, at Mr. Rogers99. Hit me up with your comments and your thoughts as we go throughout this very exciting day. All right, let's take a look at my top storylines here for National Signing Day. And as you see at the bottom of your screen as well, we have the top recruiting classes just scrolling along, but here are my top storylines. So, which school will get that number one spot? That is the big-time story for me. And by the way, Ohio State and Georgia, perhaps on pace for the greatest classes in history of the 24 sports composite. This could be quite a historic day, an exciting day at that, and I'm glad to bring it to you. So the battle for the number one class. Georgia claimed the top spot during the early signing period when it flipped a four-star defensive back from Alabama in Nadab Joseph, and then added a pair of five-star offensive linemen. You know them, Jamari Salyer and Cade Mays, as well as a five-star defensive lineman, Brenton Cox, among many others, too. Georgia with a fantastic start in early signing day. They are not at number one as we stand. That's actually Ohio State. However, there are other teams out there that are in the running, too. Perhaps a Texas, a Penn State. I want to talk about Alabama, though, because could the reign be over for the Crimson Tide in terms of running the show in the recruiting rankings, right? They have been number one the last 7 years, and there you see at the bottom of your screen, only at number 8 as we stand. And there's a chance they could lose multiple verbally committed recruits, such as linebacker Quay Walker or athlete Vernon Jackson. So something I am tracking there as well. Something I'll talk about with James Yoder later in the show, too. Alabama, Crimson Tide. Could they even make the top 6 after this day is all said and done? And by the way, Heritage will have a busy, busy day today because they have a couple of announcements coming from a couple of their players. Patrick Surtain Jr., one of them, the number one corner in the 24/7 rankings, the 6th overall recruit from Plantation, Florida. Considering a few schools here, so Surtain looking at Alabama, Clemson, perhaps LSU, or Miami. 24/7 Sports has LSU as the favorite to land Surtain, with Alabama also in the mix. Recent official visits for Surtain include Miami and Clemson. Both are very much in the running as well. A U.S. Army All-American. He is the nation's number one corner. So Patrick Surtain Jr., a very exciting announcement coming up in this hour. I've actually got the stream on my laptop right now, watching what is going on, and you know, they're going through the ceremonies, the coaches are speaking. Actually, Patrick Surtain Jr.'s dad is speaking right now at the podium, so I'm tracking the streams that are going on there at American Heritage. So Patrick Surtain Jr., a very exciting one to kind of monitor there. His dad, Patrick Surtain, a New Orleans native who played 11 seasons with the NFL's Kansas City Chiefs and Miami Dolphins, also a Pro Bowl player a few times in his career in the NFL. So Surtain Jr. with some pretty good roots there. And he is one guy we were watching. Another guy in that same school Tyson Campbell, cornerback, the number 2 corner in the nation. The Bulldogs of Georgia ranking as the favorite now to land him. Now, Campbell has recent official visits to Miami, Tennessee, and Alabama as well. 6'2.5" corner with fantastic size and athleticism. Talking about Tyson Campbell here. And Georgia, well, they're hoping to land its first 5-star cornerback prospect since 2009. So if the Bulldogs and Kirby Smart were to get Campbell, it would be a huge get. So we have some quotes here from Campbell talking about some of the respective schools. Alabama, this is what he said about the Crimson Tide. Quote, the people Coach Saban puts in the league and the winning culture that they have at the school. Georgia, he said, it's a place that I saw myself playing at, and I'd have an opportunity to come in and work hard and earn the starting job. Miami, just the opportunity to be home, just knowing the coaching staff and the future they can have. So Tyson Campbell, talking about Alabama and the winning culture, talking about Georgia and the opportunity to really make an immediate impact and be a starting corner there. And then Miami, you got the local roots, right? You have that closeness in proximity there. And by the way, little fun nugget about Tyson Campbell, Sony Michel has been in his ear about going to Georgia and joining the Bulldogs there. So Tyson Campbell and Patrick Surtain Jr. in the 10 o'clock Eastern hour, right within this hour right now, they will be announcing their schools. Some other names we are indeed tracking here. Andrew Chatfield, defensive end, the 13th ranked weak side defensive end in the nation. He'll be taking a look at Florida, Florida State, and Miami. We've got Nicholas Petit-Frere, the tackle, the number 1 tackle in the nation, with a recent visit to Ohio State. He is considering a slew of schools: Alabama, Florida, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, all very much in the mix. Florida definitely in the hunt for Petit-Frere, as this signing would give the Gators the first 5-star recruit in the Dan Mullen era. So Dan Mullen has worked really hard to get Nick to join the Florida Gators. And Nick, at 6'6", 272, he certainly has to bulk up a little bit and has good size, but, can move as well. So we have Surtain and Campbell announcing pretty darn soon. We have a live look in. Let's go to it.
University of Nebraska.
Next, Jason Surtain, the University of Miami.
So before the last 3 go, just so you know, we will be going on a live feed with ESPN. So if you'll just bear with us, they do have their timeline, and we need to follow that for our young men.
Let's go.
Okay, so there was a live look in there at American Heritage as we await the highly anticipated announcements from Patrick Surtain Jr. and Tyson Campbell. Hey, folks, this is the Cam Rogers Show here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. I am Cam Rogers. Check me out on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. Happy National Signing Day. Where are you tuning in from? I'm checking all the comments right now. Ray, Zachary, Amy, Anthony, everybody chiming in about what is really an exciting day. Let's take a look at a reaction poll here about Patrick Surtain Jr. Where will he sign? Send in your votes right now. So these are some of the schools that Surtain is considering. We got Alabama, Clemson, LSU, and Miami. Give us a heart for the Crimson Tide, a light for the Tigers of Clemson, a laughing face for the Tigers of LSU, and an angry face for the Miami Hurricanes. Surtain Jr., the top uncommitted player in the country right now. So he is the big name to watch this morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you are an Alabama fan, a Clemson fan, an LSU fan, a Miami fan, you are sitting here watching this video right now waiting with immense anticipation for a player who could totally swing your school in an upward direction in terms of the 24/7 Sports rankings, which, of course, will continue to change as all of these announcements come through. Once again, 24/7 Sports has LSU as the favorite to land Patrick Surtain Jr. His dad is a New Orleans native, played 11 seasons with the NFL's Kansas City Chiefs and Miami Dolphins. Surtain does have recent official visits to Miami, which is pretty darn close to where he is, and Clemson. So Miami would also be an interesting play here with the closeness to Surtain, and who knows if Campbell and Surtain have been in discussions about both shocking the world and going to Miami together to play for the Hurricanes. So really exciting stuff. As you see at the bottom of your screen, we are awaiting the announcement from five-star cornerback Patrick Surtain Jr. He will be committing live here on the Cam Rogers Show. So there is Surtain there and his player card. As you see the 2018 recruiting classes scroll across the bottom of your screen. Those are the rankings in real time. So we are updating them for you throughout the morning here on the Cam Rogers Show. So Surtain Jr., Tyson Campbell, we are monitoring their decisions that will be coming within the first few minutes here. And some other names, though. I was talking about Andrew Chatfield, defensive end, the 13th ranked weak side defensive end, likely to remain in the Sunshine State. Totaled 36.5 sacks the past 2 years. Chatfield is deciding among the following schools: Florida, Florida State, and Miami. So Chatfield from Plantation, Florida, likely going to stay in the Sunshine State and remain within his close ties there. So Miami reportedly wanted to visit Chatfield, but never actually did, swaying Chatfield's decision towards the Gators, many believe. So did the Miami Hurricanes miss out on an opportunity to speak with Andrew Chatfield there? So really interesting stuff at that. So for Andrew Chatfield, he envisions himself as a 3-4 outside linebacker at the next level. The problem with Miami for Chatfield, well, the Canes run a 4-3 defense, which means Andrew's going to have to be primarily with his hands in the dirt, which is not exactly what he wants, right? I just mentioned he wants to be more of an outside linebacker and coming at you from that second level of the defense. The Gators of Florida would be able to kind of accommodate that because they have the 3-4 type of defense, not the Miami Hurricanes. So there's Andrew Chatfield. Nick Petit-Frere, the number 1 offensive tackle in the nation, is another name, of course, we are tracking with a slew of schools up on his mind. We've got Alabama, Florida, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Florida definitely in the hunt here. I think Dan Mullen has done a good job recently with the recruiting process for him. And Petit-Frere actually has a pretty good relationship with the offensive line coach at Florida as well. Mentioned Nick's great size, too, and runs really well at 272 and 6'6". All right, so there is Nick Petit-Frere. I'll be talking to him in the second hour of the Cam Rogers Show. So we got the 2018 class rankings scrolling at the bottom of your screen. We are tracking Patrick Surtain Jr.'s announcement, Tyson Campbell as well. Surtain Jr., though, he's the big name you're watching, and we are going to go live to his announcement. Let's do it.
everyone. These past 4 years of high school, I had my ups and downs. This recruiting process has been a blessing. It's also been stressful. So I just want to thank God first and foremost, my teammates, pushing me every day, my teachers pushing me in the classroom, people behind me, my family, my friends who always support me. And with that being said, for the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be attending the University of
So the number 2 corner in the nation going to Athens. He has chosen the Georgia Bulldogs over Ohio State and Alabama. So Tyson Campbell from Plantation, Florida, American heritage, and he's with his buddy, of course, Patrick Surtain Jr. as well. I mentioned my theory that maybe Campbell and Surtain would shock the world and go to Miami, stay local, and those two would dominate there playing for the Canes. That's not the case. Campbell's going to Georgia, and I'm reading back at the quote that Campbell said about the Bulldogs. This is what he said. It's a place that I saw myself playing at, and I'd have an opportunity to come in and work hard and earn the starting job. So Campbell believes that he can make an immediate impact with the Georgia Bulldogs and be perhaps a starting corner for Georgia next season. So he sees an opportunity there. He chooses Georgia over Alabama, which he thought was, of course, the pinnacle of a winning culture. Miami, an opportunity to stay home. So a big-time decision there from Tyson Campbell. You just saw it live here on the Cam Rogers Show. Some other news that broke. Andrew Chatfield, the 13th-ranked weak side defensive end, has chosen the Florida Gators over Miami and Florida State. So already in the early going here of National Signing Day, Miami with 2 big misses, Tyson Campbell and Andrew Chatfield. And I talked about with Chatfield, Miami reportedly wanted to visit Andrew, but never actually went through with it. Did that have something to do with Chatfield's final decision? And also the fact that the Canes have that 4-3 defense and Chatfield wants to be that outside linebacker type and doesn't want to play with his hand in the dirt. So Chatfield going to the Florida Gators, a huge get for Dan Mullen. And we are going to Patrick Surtain awaiting his live announcement. Let's go to it.
Good morning, everybody. This has been a tough process, but first off, I would like to thank God for all the blessings, He gave me through a tough process, and I would like to thank my family, friends, and supporters for guiding me into making the right decision. And for the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be furthering my education at the University of Alabama. because, it's a culture over there. They win championships, and, over here we used to winning, so I want to be a part of that winning culture. I waited just to make sure, which school fits best for me. I went through all the schools. This school fits the best for me and my family. He just told me to stay humble and, don't let this process get to you, just weigh down your options and, we'll lead from there. No problem, roll tide.
Thank you guys for coming today. I need all my athletes back up here for a team picture, so if our parents can go back to the chairs. I need all the athletes for a group picture. Hey, cool, don't stop all day.
The most coveted player today, Patrick Surtain Jr. going to Alabama. Cam Rogers alongside the college football insider, James Yoder. James, very exciting day, my man.
Well, that is a surprise to me. I thought that was LSU all day. Nick Saban making a little resurgence here in National Signing Day camp. I've been talking about it with people for a couple of days is, what's going on with Alabama? How are they not ranked top 5? Is Saban losing his touch? I know we've seen the results in the field, Cam, but, 7 is a crazy low position for Alabama based on the talent and all the success they've had over the last 10 years. Surtain Jr. is one of potentially several players that can vaunt them up maybe as high as that number 3 spot. We'll see what happens. A lot of guys, you don't think you're going to pick Alabama, but could shock us today. I mean, even think about a guy like Nicholas Petit-Frere, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's, most likely Florida, Notre Dame, maybe a Michigan outside chance. But could Alabama come in and scoop him up? Maybe. Why not? That would be more as surprising as Patrick Surtain Jr. going to Alabama. So this is kind of the big star of the day. I think Petit-Frere coming up in a little bit here is going to be, just as big for whatever school gets him, Cam. So a lot of exciting stuff going on right now, National Signing Day. And oh, by the way, I think we've got a new class rankings. We're going to flash those across the screen, but I think this commitment just now from Campbell pushes Georgia back up to the number 1 spot. So we'll see if that is updated as such and the rankings come in and reflects that. So go ahead, take it away, Cam.
All right, let's go to Nicholas Petit-Frere.
And next is Nicholas Petit-Frere. Nick is here today with his mother Loris and quite a few other extended family and friends. On the field, Nick is a fierce competitor with a relentless urge to dominate every play. His 93 pancake blocks this season alone are a testament to that. Off the field, he is a gentle giant. Caring, honest, respectful, hardworking, trustworthy, and a positive role model. An agile pass blocker. Nick has been recruited and offered by all Division I Power 5 schools and was rated the number 1 offensive lineman in the country. Nick's drive has earned him great honors, including playing in the Under Armour All-American game and nomination to the U.S. Army All-American Bowl game. Nick is a 2017 Tampa Bay Times number 1 player, Spectrum Sports rated number 1 player, ranked by 24/7 Sports as the number 10 overall player in the nation, number 3 in the state, and number 1 at his position. He was ranked by ESPN as the number 16 overall player in the nation, number 5 in the state, and number 2 overall by position. He was a Tampa Bay Times first team and also recent winner of the Jimbo Kynes Award for the best lineman in Hillsborough County. He was also a 3-year member of our varsity basketball team. And today, Nick signs with, well, we're going to have to wait just a few more minutes on that. So, I feel like that, when the TV show really gets to a good point and it just went to commercial, that's kind of what that felt like. So on that note, you're probably aware that just in a few minutes we will be going live on ESPN as Nick makes his decision. Before that, I want to make 2 points. First, I was insistent to ESPN that today is also a special day for Mayan, Cody, Samantha, and Zach. In no way should their special day be over.
And we are awaiting that decision from the #1 ranked tackle in the nation. You enjoy the moment, James. You let it run a little bit longer, as you said, as they were talking about, a few minutes to go here before he announces, and I'll be talking to him in the second hour. I want to go back, though, to the discussion about Alabama, because it was a big-time storyline for me at the top of the show. Alabama, the #1 recruiting class the last 7 years.
Yep.
Huge get with Surtain Jr. now, the cornerback there. So is there some credence to maybe Saban losing his touch to the Dabo Sweeneys of the world and the Kirby Smarts?
Well, look at kind of break it down like this. I read a stat that is so astounding, you're not going to believe what this stat, right? This is more of not Nick Saban, but just that group of teams you're talking about. In the last 2 recruiting classes, 17 and now 18, half of the 5 stars, half of all of them have gone to 4 schools. Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. So those 4 schools are pulling miles ahead. Now, Texas is kind of catching up this year. Alabama's maybe dropping back a little bit this year, but that just shows the dominance of those 4 schools. We've seen it. They're in the playoff. They're in the national championship. Looks like we've got a signing coming up here second. Now, we're not going to Nicholas Petit. But, Cam, these 4 schools have really pulled away. So you say Alabama.
All right, James, I think I got to cut you off. We are heading to Nick's announcement here.
That one, 3 minutes. And so as we wait for that cue. While we're waiting, let me make a few other comments. I want to congratulate our girls soccer team on your season. Unfortunately, the girls came up short last night against McKee, ending your season, but we remain proud of you. Congratulations on your district championship and your great season. Also last night, our girls varsity basketball team defeated Sarasota Military in the first round of the district tournament. So congratulations to you girls. They advanced to play Brooks de Bartolo. That'll be tomorrow night in the district semifinals at 5:30 at Academy of the Holy Names. And our boys varsity basketball team last night defeated Canterbury.
That's the live look in there, James. And Nick is really an interesting guy to track here because there are so many schools in the mix. You got Alabama, you got Florida, you got Michigan, you got Notre Dame, you got Ohio State. Florida definitely in the hunt here. Ohio State had the most recent visit. Reportedly is starting to gain momentum. And you really can't look past Urban Meyer and his power.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some of the best recruiters in the country after this guy, and with good reason. He's a behemoth of a man. I mean, if Florida lands him, it'd be a nice, first get for Dan Mullen, this first big 5-star recruit from, the area. He's in Florida. He's in the Tampa area, so wouldn't be necessarily surprising if he picks them. But, Notre Dame is the one I think has been the wild card here. He has been kind of enamored with them. As you said, Ohio State. Don't overlook potentially Michigan, making it just a late surge there, Cam, to potentially get him, they practice at his high school during bowl season. So there's a lot of teams that have had contact with Nick Petit-Frere in the past month or so. So I think this is as anyone's guess as of any commit we're going to see today. I mean, I was very surprised by Patrick Surtain picking Alabama over LSU, of course, but this one I think is anyone's game. What won't be surprising, of course, is if he picks the Florida Gators. But I will say this reminds me a lot of another Georgia offensive lineman, 5-star guy last year, Isaiah Wilson, where they basically turned his signing day. We kept going back live looking, because they turned it into a look at the entire school, which I certainly appreciate, but we're waiting for his announcement here. He's got a lot of other athletes at his high school making their announcements or signing with schools today from different sports, not just football, obviously. So we're going to get back to him here, but I think it's going to be the Florida Gators. If I'm making that call right now, I'm going to say it's the Florida Gators on Nick Petit-Frere.
So Alabama gets Surtain. Georgia gets Tyson Campbell. Florida gets Andrew Chatfield. Those are 3 of the big names we were tracking this morning. And Nick Petit-Frere here, who could go to Alabama, would swing Alabama up the rankings even higher. Could they get to #1? It's going to be really, really hard, James.
Well, I don't think they're going to be number one just because of the strength of Georgia and Ohio State. We think about Ohio State, 19 four-star players came, I believe 11 at last look, top 100 players. Can you believe that? Georgia with the 6 5-star guys, and now is I believe 7 5-stars. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll get our stats team on that. Georgia getting another 5-star today, so they may be moving up the strengthening their class. So I don't think Alabama can go number 2, and that's actually a fact, folks. Maybe we can put up breaking news on the alert. Georgia is now the number 1 class in the country with recent commits this morning. So Georgia now 7 5-stars. 12 4-stars, a handful of 3-stars, 4 of them can. But this is a 1-2 matchup. I don't think anyone has a chance to jump over either one of those teams, no matter what happens today. And we'll see. Looks like we've got Nick going in. Let's take it to Nick Petit-Frere.
You guys have been amazing, and thank you to my teammates. Once again, I couldn't be here without any of you guys. Y'all have been my best friend for these past 4 years, from the seniors from my freshman year all the way to now. So I want to say thank you to all of you guys, and especially my Berkeley coaches as well. Thank you for everything. And without further ado, I would like to say that I will be committing to the University of Ohio State. Go Buckeyes.
And Urban Meyer does it again. All right, so we have a spread out here with Alabama, Georgia, Florida making big-time splashes.
Call me shocked, Cam. I did not think he would end up in Columbus. Kind of takes off the sting of losing Jackson Carman to Clemson, in-town, in-state boy, heading out to South Carolina, state of South Carolina, and Clemson. They get Nick Petit-Frere. Did we get his name?
It is Petit-Frere, yes.
The school sent us that. I've been hacking that name for a couple days now, so I apologize to Nick. Sounds like Cam is going to be joining us in about an hour live to talk about this commitment. So that's going to be big. Looking forward to that. This is a big-time commitment. And by the way, Cam, it now puts the Ohio State Buckeyes back at number 1 against Georgia. So Georgia goes number 1 for about 20 minutes. Ohio State's back number 1. So this is crazy. Let's make sure we get that graphic change. Ohio State is number 1 back with Nick Petit-Frere back, picking the Buckeyes over Florida. This is a huge loss for Dan Mullen. This is a big-time loss for Dan Mullen. He was, the 24/7 Sports crystal ball. We'll give them some credit. They do some really cool things there. Their crystal balls was 60-70% for the last month to Florida, and to lose him just by going to Ohio State last weekend visit before signing day, losing him to the Buckeyes, I think is a huge loss for them. Big loss for Notre Dame, Michigan, Alabama. Everyone, I think, is shocked by this commitment right now. And just to be frank, I think is a huge gift for Urban Meyer. Cements them as, maybe, as you said, might be the best recruiting class of all time.
Absolutely. And in fact, that was a big storyline today. Georgia, Ohio State, the tangle between those two schools to get that number 1 spot. Ohio State and Georgia are continually on pace for the greatest class in history of the 24/7 Sports composite, both of them respectively, in terms of collective player ratings. So really a fantastic get there. Nicholas Petit-Frere commits to Ohio State, the number 1 offensive tackle in the nation, standing at 6'6", weighing 272, obviously needs to hit the weight room just a little bit to bulk up there at the college level, but he is a fantastic player, great in space, going to be a fantastic tackle there for Urban Meyer and the Ohio State Buckeyes. So, all of the names we've been tracking today, Campbell, Chatfield, Surtain Jr., Petit-Frere, all of these guys have gone to different schools. Surtain to Alabama, Campbell to Georgia, Chatfield to Florida, and Nicholas Petit-Frere to Ohio State. Ohio State back at number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fluid situation. It is National Signing Day. Players will, sign their letters of intent, etc., and the rankings will, of course, change, and we'll keep you updated here on the Cam Rogers Show on this special 2-hour edition on this National Signing Day. I am Cam Rogers. As you see, Nicholas Petit-Frere has committed to Ohio State. The college football insider, James Yoder, is alongside. He's working the wires. He's working the grids right now, getting all the latest and greatest. And so those are the big-time names that we were tracking this morning. Surtain, Campbell, Petit-Frere, Chatfield. Tanner McKee is in the second hour. Quarterback out of California, deciding among Alabama, Stanford, Texas A&M, and Washington. As you take a look at some of the game tape here for Nicholas Petit-Frere, absolute bulldozer at the tackle position, literally blows players off the ball. Look at that. That's how you stay with your freaking block, ladies and gentlemen. Can't wait to talk to him. I love offensive line play. I especially love elite offensive line play. And Nicholas Petit-Frere brings that.
I mean, Cam, I just can't speak enough about it. As I sit here and think about this, for Urban Meyer to basically recruit this guy for a month, I mean, they were not, if you decided in December, I don't even think Ohio State would have been amongst his favorites at that time, back in December when he made, we decided to announce here in February. So this is just such a big time get. I mean, Urban Meyer, we talked about it just briefly before we came back on screen here. In the last 2 years, this is now over 50% of the 5 stars in the 2017-2018 class. More than half have gone to 4 schools, Cam. Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Georgia. Ohio State, Georgia, the big winners so far here today, kind of flip-flopping 2-1, 1 back to 2 with Campbell and Nicholas Petit-Frere. But who's the other guy? Another 5-star, Patrick Surtain Jr. Where did he go? Alabama. So it's those 4 schools, and everybody else is looking up and hoping they can compete, hoping they can find some diamonds in the rough, a 3-star that plays like a 5-star, a 4-star that plays by a 5-star, because the concentration of talent is in Columbus, it's at Georgia, it's at Alabama, and it is at Clemson right now in college football. We've seen those teams made the playoffs. This past year, we've seen them make the playoffs multiple times. Alabama 4 straight years. Ohio State multiple years out of the last 4, and that is where we are at in the world of college football recruiting right now. We have 4 schools dominating where these major players, these 5 stars go. It kind of reminds me of the NBA, where all the talent's being concentrated to 2 or 3 teams, these super teams. And Nicholas Petit-Frere going to Ohio State is as big of a shocker as Patrick Surtain to Alabama. I'm shocked today, Cam. This is actually one of the more I thought it'd be a boring signing day. It is the opposite of boring so far. It is awesome right now. It is great. It is a phenomenal signing day so far with these 2 recruits kind of shocking the world, going to schools that nobody thought they were going to choose in Ohio State and then Alabama.
It's interesting, James, because we have the early signing period for the first time back in December, and we thought, okay, maybe that would make National Signing Day a little anticlimactic. Not the case, because we've had some really fun announcements here on the Cam Rogers Show. Nicholas Petit-Frere, we have Patrick Surtain Jr., Tyson Campbell, all announcing on the program. Looking forward to chatting with Nicholas in the second hour. So all you Ohio State fans, you better stay tuned to this video right here, right now, because I'll be chatting with Nick later in the program. Also, some other storylines we are tracking here. So I mentioned Tanner McKee a little bit. He's announcing this morning, but he's actually a 2020 recruit in essence, because he's going to be on a mission trip for 2 years. So at this point in the proceedings, however, McKee is the top guy at the quarterback position, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and as I mentioned, does plan to serve that 2-year mission trip before joining his program of choice. So he has been named one of the 12 finalists for that prestigious Elite 11 quarterback competition this past summer. Passed for over 2,000 yards with 23 touchdowns against only 2 picks, and added over 600 rushing yards and 11.4 yards per carry to boot. Took an official visit to Stanford recently, during which he met, James, Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice.
Well, she's on campus there. She is formerly a member of the College Football Playoff Committee.
Former Secretary
of State, member of the College Football Playoff Committee. A professor at Stanford, has been out of the limelight for 9 years now since she left office, and she is an employee at Stanford. So they use her. David Shaw does better than anybody. You'll see him have recruiting visits where titans of industry, tech titans, maybe Mark Zuckerberg, founders of Google will come by. Elon Musk they'll go to their thing. They really sell there at Stanford. They have the opportunity to have this amazing career in the professional world outside of football, and that's why these quarterbacks, obviously for one, can continue to go to Stanford. They've had 4 high 5-star guys for 5 straight classes commit to them, and I think Tanner McKee, I'm guessing he's going to go there at Stanford. But it's funny to think about this, Cam. This guy could be playing in the 2023 season as a senior, because he's going to go 2 years and not play. And the guys who are coming in, let's just say a Patrick Surtain, he might be getting ready to go to the NFL, and Tanner McKee might get at Stanford's campus or maybe Texas and redshirt a year. It's kind of crazy how you're going to miss those 2 years out. So he'll hit campus 20 years old, a little more mature, a little more world view, but probably won't play right away because he'll be out of football for 2 full years.
Well, here's the other question here, James. I mean, could there be changes in college football rules and the process with transferring and all that by the time McKee is at whatever school he decides to go to? You know?
I mean, absolutely. Imagine if he gets there. Imagine if Stanford over-recruits him the next 2 years or whatever school he chooses, and he gets there and, whoa, stacked class. Could he just be like, well,
exactly.
I'm not going to go. So they almost have to recruit him for 2 years if he's going to wait there if these new transfer rules come into play, because he could get on campus. Maybe the coach is not there anymore. Maybe the offensive coordinator is not there. He could say, hey, I'm going to go to BYU now. I'm going to go to Washington now. They've got a better situation for me at this time. So I wouldn't put any great point, Cam. I wouldn't put any necessarily firm commitment that that's where he'll end up 4 years, 3 years from now when he ends up on campus.
Okay, so Tanner is in the 11 o'clock hour. We will be tracking his decision. Then let's get to the 2018 recruiting classes here, the top 25. Let's go through 25 through 21. These are all updated in real time here. And checking in at number 25. In fact, I guess we are working on that graphic right now. We will get to it. But James, I want to go back to the number 1 school as we stand, and that would be the Georgia Bulldogs.
Yep.
Made a huge run in the early signing day period. Ohio State went into this morning as the top school. And Ohio State, of course, just got Petit-Frere there, so that was a big get for them. Georgia, of course, got Tyson Campbell, so it's this tangle between these two schools.
We've got some breaking news I want to kind of break in here. I'm not sure if we've got footage of this or not, but we have a major flip. Otis Reese, this is being reported, so it's coming through the wire, be recruiting by Rivals, a guy named Radi Nazbulsi. He's the publisher of UGAsports.com, which is a longtime Rivals.com commitment. He is now reporting that Otis Reese, been committed to Michigan for 18 months. His high school teammate Aubrey Solomon started as a true freshman on the defensive line at Michigan this year, has in fact flipped.
Wow.
From Michigan to Georgia. This is the number 1 player in Michigan's class. He is the star of the class. Michigan has really built this class around him for the last 18 months, Cam. We spoke about this on December 20th, signing day, right? We spoke about the fact that why wouldn't he sign with Michigan? Took visits in the last 3 weeks to Central Michigan, then stopped by the University of Michigan afterwards, went to the University of Michigan 3 weekends ago, and then this past weekend was at Georgia camp. Something about it, we heard, several of the Georgia players, a lot of the recruits were saying, what you wanted at Michigan, what you thought Jim Harbaugh was building a year and a half ago, we've already built in less time, better recruiting class. Everybody in the state of Georgia is coming, including guys like Justin Fields, running backs, linebackers, defensive end, offensive linemen. This is the new Alabama here at Georgia. They sold it to him. This is a huge blow to the Jim Harbaugh Michigan football recruiting class. They are on the message boards, on the Twitter spheres, on the Chat Sports app. They are probably in mutiny right now, Michigan fans, that they lost him. And this is just another amazing recruiting job by Kirby Smart to flip Otis Reese from Michigan. 18 months committed, Cam. Can you believe that? And he's going to flip to Georgia on signing day, completely spurring Michigan. Now, they've got a borderline 5-star linebacker to kind of make up for the loss of Reese in Cameron McGrone, but this is a huge deal, Cam. This is probably the biggest flip of the day that we're going to see of any player, just because how highly rated Reese has been, for the longest time, and how long he's been committed to Michigan. Otis Reese, folks, flips from Michigan. He will be a Georgia Bulldog. Jim Harbaugh is not happy right now.
And James, of course, you were well versed within Ann Arbor and many of the folks out there. So obviously a big-time story. Otis Reese, outside linebacker, going to Georgia.
So I do want to say this, right? So from what we know, Otis Reese is still scheduled to come on live. We're going to go to that signing, that commitment when he verbally, declares his school, on air live. And so we'll go to that, right? As of right now, this is still a report. So there is a chance someone's getting misinformation. All of the Michigan sources I spoke to, all of the 24/7s, Rivals, all the blogs that cover this, that claim to have sources, that claim to know what Michigan football is thinking, all of them last night said they felt good about Reese. But just getting across the wires here, Cam, Rivals.com's Michigan site called thewolverine.com, they are now reporting it. The Detroit News is reporting it. Otis Reese is flipping from from Michigan to Georgia. So, coming through, talking about it's a done deal is what we're hearing, but are we sure he's announced it officially yet? I don't know that fact, but this is what Rivals is reporting. This is what the Detroit News is reporting. As far as I know, though, he has not spoken the word, so there's a shrivel of chance, but I would almost bet bet everything that he is going to Georgia based on all these outlets reporting that he has flipped from Michigan to Georgia. The man's name is Otis Reese. 4-star linebacker, top 100 player, Cam, committed to Michigan for 18 months.
For so long, James.
I don't get it. I don't understand maybe why, if you're going to give a school that commitment, maybe like what's changed in those last 18 months? Why not just say, hey, I'm not committed anymore. I'm going to look around, because I bet Michigan stopped recruiting other players. It's if you've got this guy committed, we're holding a scholarship for you, and they can go wherever they want, and it's his right. But I always do think, much like Josh McDaniels in the NFL yesterday, like why wait to the 23rd and a half hour to make the decision? So they can't get a guy. Did the Colts lose on somebody they may have wanted? Did Michigan lose out on somebody they could have recruited harder at that linebacker position? And for Kirby Smart, it's just another day at the office, baby. Getting 5 stars, getting 4 stars, getting Michigan's best player, getting the best players from the state of Florida, Ohio. They are just crushing it at Georgia. And what we saw from Kirby Smart in year 2, Cam, for a first-time head coach, this is the best start for a first-time head coach maybe in college football history. You think about it, he comes in, takes over, they go 8-5, then they get a really nice recruiting class last year, national championship game overtime in year 2 against his mentor, Nick Saban. Then you get, now I'm guessing Reese is going to bump up. We're going to update our ratings. We're going to see what the Chat Sports pundits and scribes in the back office decide what this does to the Georgia class. But does Otis Reese going to Georgia push them back above Ohio State? That's now a 5-star and a high 4-star that have committed to them today. Already had 6 5-stars going in today, Cam. This is huge for them. But going back to Kirby Smart, has anyone ever started stronger? I know we've had guys coming. We
are hearing it's official now, James.
Yeah,
that flip.
Yeah, that is official. So if we get that footage, folks, we'll take it to you here momentarily. But Otis Reese is official, so it is no longer reports. It is no longer I'm hearing. That is the word, folks. It is official. Otis Reese is heading to the University of Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart. One other breaking news to know: Greg Schiano, Ohio State's defensive coordinator, has told Bruce Feldman, works for Fox, works for a couple other outlets on TV and writing, that he is not leaving the Ohio State Buckeyes. That was a big concern of Ohio State fans, that he was leaving, that defense that he's instilled there over the last 2 years would have to kind of restart with somebody new. Greg Schiano will stay at Ohio State and will not go on to the New England Patriots, where he was potentially rumored to take over as defensive coordinator there. And
Schiano played a key part in landing Nicholas Petit-Frere there, so it kind of makes sense at the end of the day that those two are going to Columbus or / remaining in Columbus. All right, so there is Otis Reese. That is official. He has flipped to Georgia, a historic recruiting class for the Bulldogs and Kirby Smart. The Bulldogs already have some fantastic names: Jamari Salyer, Cade Mays, Brenton Cox from the early signing period. So a lot has changed, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go into our 2018 recruiting class rankings. 25 through 21, Nebraska, Baylor, Texas A&M, Virginia Tech, and TCU there. And look, the 25, 24 spots have been pretty fluid. A&M actually jumped in recently into the top 25, James. Yep. Maryland was there for a bit. NC State floated around that bottom ranking as well. What do you make of these schools? Well, Nebraska's the one that really, I guess Nebraska and Baylor, that really stick out to me, Cam. So the job that they have done with their coach, splitting time, Scott Frost, UCF, national champions according to them, and recruiting in Nebraska, got a lot of really great guys down the stretch, held a class together, and improved it from when he took that role. Baylor is the one that is also surprising, with all the turmoil at that school, with all the negative, publicity and negative connotation that is associated with that name right now. If you're a parent, if you're a mother, you're going to send your child to that school with all the allegations, sexual misconduct, even the word rape, all these different things that have been associated with that name Baylor lately. To be a top 25 class, I think, is impressive from this new coaching staff that really had nothing to do with those prior improprieties. And then, Texas A&M, top 25 class, I think is a tad disappointing because they've recruited at such a high level. I know they lost their head coach, Kevin
Sumlin, but they brought in one of the best coaches in college football, Jimbo Fisher. Now,
he's pretty good too.
There are quite a few guys coming up later today that could bump Texas A&M up into the top 20, potentially a little bit higher, maybe, but it would take a lot for them to get up there. But Texas A&M is the team out of this little group here of the bottom 5 of the top 25 that has the chance to jump potentially into the top 20 as we go throughout the day on this 2018 National Signing Day.
Now, you mentioned A&M. They're in the running for Jalen Waddle, the 5'9", 175-pound wide receiver with a reported 4.37 40-yard dash, and a 4-star athlete, Vernon Jackson, an Alabama verbal commit. So A&M in the running for those players, so they could continue to move up the rankings there. So let's go into 20 through 16 here. Tennessee, South Carolina, Florida. There's Michigan at 17. They stay pat despite that flip from Otis Reese, and then UCLA at 16.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan drops throughout today, too. We've talked about schools, Florida, they're in on a few guys. Tennessee, South Carolina, some of these schools that could potentially pop from those 21, 22, 20 down 2019-18, jump over Michigan. Losing Otis Reese is a big deal. To see Chip Kelly and UCLA kind of pop in, they're already ahead of Michigan. I think it's got to be disappointing for University of Michigan football fans lose their best player in Otis Reese. So down class for Jim Harbaugh. Results from the field didn't meet expectations, and now the recruiting class doesn't meet expectations. And Cam, we're going to update these rankings momentarily. We're going to see Michigan drop a little bit further with Reese. Now Reese has affected their rankings. We'll kind of roll through these. These rankings, Cam, we are updating them by the second at this point.
Literally by the second.
So the next time we flip through these in a couple minutes, they're going to be different.
Yes, absolutely. So there you go, 20 through 16 there. Michigan entered today with 0 5-star recruits. 20 total commits total until, Otis Reese flipped, so that would be 19 at this point.
Yeah.
Vincent Gray, Michael Barrett, Ronnie Bell, some other names monitoring there for Michigan. I want to talk about Florida a little bit because the head coaching tailspin, if you will, of movement from Sumlin and Cristobal now at Oregon, and then you have Taggart at Florida State. So a lot of changes to the coaches, Florida included. Dan Mullen, now the head coach there for the Gators. And Florida, of course, with a big-time get in Andrew Chatfield. James, when you get a new head coach, you're almost starting from scratch unless you have some ties to the state. Dan Mullen to Florida. What do you make of him and his job so far with the Gators?
Well, losing out on your top target, Nick Petit-Frere. I'm messing it up again, Cam. Frere.
Yeah,
okay,
Frere.
I've got it. I will we'll go back to French English class after this show. So that's a big blow to his just momentum starting that job. That was a guy he had to keep in state. Losing out on him, by the way, to his mentor, Urban Meyer, the guy he coached under at multiple stops, Utah, Florida, University of Bowling Green State University, I should say. Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, that's a big time loss for the Florida Gators. I think that Dan Mullen really has to be feeling the pain on that. That was the star guy, and everybody thought that he was going. Everyone at his high school, all the people that are kind of talking to him on a day-to-day basis, they wanted him to go to Florida. So big time shocker to go to Ohio State. And props to Greg Schiano, Urban Meyer for getting him to come north from the state of Florida to play in blustery Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
All right, so let's take a look at 15 through 11. Again, folks, we are changing these graphics in real time. USC at 15, Florida State 14, Oregon at 13, LSU checks in at 12, and Washington at number 11. Actually, a big story for me entering today was USC. They came away as the nation's biggest winner on signing day by snagging 6 prospects, all at 4-star ratings or higher last year. The Trojans, they may not be in the top 10 now, but their average player rating of 93.58 is actually higher than all of the teams except for Ohio State and Georgia, which are on historic paces right now in terms of the history of the 24/7 Sports composite. And, of course, Clay Helton, the head coach there, signing an extension. So some good stuff happening for USC. You got Florida State there, another interesting one. I do want to take a look at Oregon as well. With Mario Cristobal, of course, Willie Taggart no longer the head coach there. And Oregon remaining in the mix for nearly a dozen prospects today. They did lose out on Elijah Winston, the 4-star defensive end and linebacker. He actually flipped to USC, James. Mm-hmm. Mario Cristobal, though, all things considered, Not a bad job.
Not a bad job at all. Kept their kind of star quarterback, Tyler Shuck. Am I pronouncing that right? Yes, it is Tyler Shuck. We'll have him for an interview later today, Cam. Excited about that one. So this recruiting class from Cristobal, I gotta tell you, Washington, Oregon, if you get any of those Pacific Northwest, if you ever get the Washington States and Oregon States in there, something's in the water, but you don't see them too often. But to be able to get top 15 classes, out-recruit UCLA, out-recruit Florida State, out-recruit Michigan, out-recruit Florida, is huge because they don't have anywhere near the local prospects in the state of Oregon, in the state of Washington, to pull from. They've got to go to Nevada, they've got to go to California, Arizona to get almost all of their players, Cam. You might get 2, 3, 4 players in both those states a year that are even Pac-12 worthy players. So for them to get top 15 classes is just huge. Major kudos to Mario Cristobal for keeping that class together and kind of improving it as we went on down the stretch from December 20th till now.
Let's continue along in our rankings here, folks. 10 through 6, you got Auburn, Notre Dame, Clemson, Oklahoma, and Miami. I mentioned earlier today, folks, Miami with 2 big-time misses. Andrew Chatfield, Tyson Campbell, and hey, you can consider Patrick Surtain Jr. and make it 3 big-time misses for the Hurricanes. But Miami was really out of the running for Surtain Jr. Campbell was somewhat in the mix. Chatfield was very much in the mix until they kind of botched this whole visit that didn't actually happen. So there is Miami at number 6. And again, folks, things will absolutely change as we go along. I see some Boomer Sooners in the comments section. Patrick, Sam, and some Roll Tide fans as well. We got Texas fans checking into the Cam Rogers show too. So Oklahoma, class headlined by big-time offensive tackle Bray Walker, 4th in the nation at his respective position. He's a big boy, 6'7", 320 pounds. So the story with Oklahoma, they've got a crop loaded with defense, which is really where they need help. And it seems as though Lincoln Riley, an offensive mind in his own right, is actually predicating a lot of his recruiting resources to the defense, bringing in at least 3 4-star prospects along that defensive line, and we're waiting on signing day decisions from a couple other players as well. And look, Lincoln Riley placing a lot of emphasis on that side of the ball. And a talking point in this regard here, James, because we saw it with Oklahoma in the college football playoff. But I want to extrapolate to the Big 12 as a conference and the bad rap that they get with defense. Will that trend ever change to where, the Big 12 becomes somewhat of a defensive powerhouse?
Well, I don't really know or think so. I mean, they were, I guess the Pac-12 to another regard, were really the first conferences, 20 plus years ago to start opening up their offenses a little bit. And it really exploded about 15 years ago, Cam. And then we've seen it with Baylor, TCU, less traditional powers, making runs at playoffs, being in multiple big-time bowl games because they run those 4, 5 wide receiver sets, and also with TCU introducing the running quarterback in those 4 and 5 receiver sets. So with that being said, now Oklahoma State has kind of become an offensive power under Mike Gundy. Oklahoma has been under Bob Stoops, and now bringing an offensive head coach in Lincoln, large game Lincoln Riley, as I've coined his name. And so with that being said, I don't believe that the Pac-12 or the Big 12 will ever kind of become a defensive conference like you normally consider the ACC. Yep. Sometimes people consider, the SEC. Sometimes people consider the Big 10 more of a 3 yards in a cloud of dust running conference defense. Win 17-14, 17-10 kind of conference. I always think you're going to see, at least as the rules are as they are in college football, and the head coaches who focus mostly on offense. Even Jimbo Fisher Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M, but you've got Tom Herman is what I meant to say, coming into Texas, major offensive guy, much more than their last coach, Charlie Strong, was. They're going to become more of an offensive power. They try to be a little more of a defensive school. That never worked out under Strong. But, the coaches there are predicated on offense, and I think you're going to continue to see innovative offensive sets, not just at the top with Texas, Oklahoma, but the Kansas States, the Baylors, the TCUs, Oklahoma States, every other team in that conference has an incentive to be offensively driven. And so that's kind of what you're going to see going forward.
And, of course, Oklahoma did sport some pretty darn good defenses in the early 2000s. Perhaps they're trying to get back to that with a lot of the recruiting going to that side of the ball. Talk about Notre Dame here, about to sign the biggest class of the Brian Kelly era. Signed 21 players entering today. Could possibly sign as many as 7 on National Signing Day. The Fighting Irish were in the Nicholas Petit-Frere sweepstakes, if you will, but that didn't really work out. They did get Houston Griffith, the nation's number 11 corner. already enrolled with the Fighting Irish. I had a chance to speak with him during the National Early Signing Day period, which was a really great interview. There's Auburn there at number 10. They landed the number 1 athlete in the nation in Joey Gatewood. Auburn with just 3 spots to fill today.
Going to be a great quarterback for Gus Malzahn's system.
I expect Auburn to really attack the offensive line as they go throughout their decisions here today.
One note on Notre Dame today, Cam. Big time get, former Arizona State commitment, offensive tackle Jarrett Patterson. Just outside the 250, depending on what recruiting service you want. But Chip Kelly went after him. Jim Harbaugh went after him hard. Decides to come all the way across the country from Southern California to tiny South Bend, Indiana, and play for the Fighting Irish. So it kind of takes the sting off, maybe losing, the 5-star that's choosing Ohio State, Nicholas Petit-Frere, and they get Jarrett Patterson, a big get for them. And with the offensive linemen, 2 first-team All-Americans in the offensive line for Notre Dame this season, both heading on to the NFL. So getting Patterson kind of will ease the pain of that loss.
All right, let's take a look at 5 through 1 now in the 2018 recruiting class rankings. Penn State at 5, Alabama shooting up to number 4. Texas at 3, Ohio State at 2, and Georgia at 1. James, before we went on air today on the Cam Rogers Show, Alabama was at number 8, and then they got the big-time commitments today. And look, there were a couple of verbal commitments, too, for Alabama that we thought maybe might flip. We are still waiting on some of them. But Alabama checking in at number 4, a big comeback.
Yeah, so they get Patrick Surtain Jr., and that kind of really rackets them up, a 5-star guy. But we didn't talk about this, and we're gonna update these rankings momentarily. Scroll through them again. You're gonna see a lot of teams moving here, Cam, especially in that 10 to 20 range. A lot of teams dropping 3, 4, 5 spots. Some teams popping up that kind of spot. But Alabama gained Patrick Surtain Jr., 5-star cornerback, top 10 player in America, but did lose Bobby Brown, Arlington, Texas, here in the local Dallas area where Chat Sports Studios is broadcasting this show. Flipped from Alabama back to Texas A&M, where he had originally been signed way back when he was a junior in high school. So, he committed as a junior in high school and then decommitted on December 20th on signing day. Didn't sign with anyone.
Right.
Committed to Alabama and then flips right back to Texas A&M. Weird last 7 weeks for Bobby Brown. Decommits, commits, decommits, then commits again. So, wild class him. So they gain 1 player, probably the one they wanted, of course, and then they lose maybe a lesser ranked player, but still nothing to sneeze at. The number 187th player in the 82nd player in the country, Bobby Brown, defensive tackle, now heading to Texas A&M.
You know what's a school we haven't talked about much today, James? And they were very active in the early signing period. Penn State.
Yeah.
So a lot of turnover there at PSU. Of course, Saquon Barkley draft. Joe Moorhead gone. Mike Gesicki, of course, he is heading to the draft as well. But Jeff Franklin, despite all that, doing a great job wrapping up his 5th recruiting class in Happy Valley. And, of course, we look back to that early signing period with Micah Parsons, the 5-star defensive end, 5th prospect in the nation. He's an early enrollee, so he's already in Happy Valley doing his thing, which is outstanding. And you got Justin Shorter as well, a 6'4", 213-pound wide receiver, the nation's number 1 wide receiver and a 5-star player. You got Ricky Slade, all-purpose back, the nation's number 1 RB and 5-star player too. Hey, and the 6th-ranked kicker, because kickers are people too, James.
That's what I've been told.
So Penn State having really a fantastic overall recruiting season.
I mean, phenomenal recruiting class. You talk about Slade. The offensive talent they're bringing in is phenomenal, and then you add, the best or second best defensive player in the country with Micah Parsons. Just a phenomenal class. Penn State, Ohio State, they have really, kind of been the class of the Big Ten this recruiting season, and big time hats off to James Franklin for not only getting the players he did like Slade and some others, but also re-recruiting Micah Parsons down the stretch. He was an early commitment to them as a junior, decommitted. A lot of people thought he would end up at Ohio State, maybe Alabama. Ends up committing back to Micah, or signing with Penn State on the December 20th announcement. Cam, by the way, live on the Cam Rogers Show, if I recall correctly, on December 20th, Micah Parsons made that announcement.
Yes, indeed. It was very exciting at that. We showed some announcements this morning on the Cam Rogers Show as well. Patrick Surtain Jr., Tyson Campbell, Nicholas Petit-Frere, of course, going to Ohio State. So a lot of action going in the early part of National Signing Day. So there is your top 5 2018 recruiting classes. One more time: Penn State, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia. Keep it right here on this video, ladies and gentlemen, because we are tracking all of the latest in these recruiting rankings. We've got conference rankings coming up later as well. We are updating those by the very millisecond. Let's get up a reaction poll for everybody tuning into the program here. Which is the best conference, perhaps, for recruiting? SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12. You got Georgia and Ohio State representing the SEC and the Big 10 respectively. You got Michigan dropping off, kind of hurting Big 10 right now. But what conference are you looking at here, James?
Typically it's the SEC by a wide margin. You usually, most years, you'll have 5, 6, sometimes as many as 7, Cam, crazy enough, teams in the SEC from the top 10. Not seeing it as much this year, although you have a resurgence of Alabama now popping up from 7 into 4. We've got the ACC with Miami and Clemson now in the top 5. Florida State a little lower than you expect. Then usually Florida State top 5, 6, 7 class under Jimbo Fisher. Now Willie Taggart's got them at 12, much higher than we expected after their recruiting class started to fall apart when rumors swirled of Fisher. But I'm going to stick with the SEC. I mean, if you look at the schools, even schools that are having down years, you've got Georgia right now, number 1, Alabama at 4, Cam. Then you kind of skip down a little bit. You've got Auburn at 10. You've got LSU at 14, Florida at 16. These are the updated rankings we're about to show on the screen here. And even a school like South Carolina, Tennessee in that top 25, scrolling down, Mississippi State just outside the top 25. So they've done it historically, done it this year. I think year in, year out, you're always going to say it's the SEC is really the best conference for recruiting because they've got the most talent in the South. I mean, that's really where they recruit, and they can go into places like Texas, places like California, grab them. Just think about the best player in California last year, Najee Harris. Where did he end up playing? USC? No. Went to Alabama and then started the national championship game.
Okay, folks, throw in your respective reactions, and we'll be tracking them here on the Cam Rogers Show on this National Signing Day edition. So we are continually updating the 2018 recruiting classes. I'm going to go through, again, the updated, fresh version of the top 25. So there are the Maryland Terrapins making it into the top 25. They weren't there the last time we showed you this graphic. Virginia Tech checking in at number 24, Nebraska at 23, Tennessee at number 22, TCU at 21. Going through 20 through 16 now, South Carolina, Michigan now 19, James.
So a lot of movement here, Cam. So we've seen just in the past 10 minutes, we went through this the first time, you've got Michigan dropping a couple spots. They lose Otis Reese. They lose those recruiting points, that recruiting juice that he gives them. They drop down to 19. We see Texas A&M getting Bobby Brown's commitment, and that kind of pops them up to 18. UCLA sitting pretty there. Florida jumps up a couple spots, Cam. They got a commitment this morning as well. So a lot of movement in this. I think that 10 to 20 is where you're going to see the most movement because it's tough to move from 4 to 3 because how are you going to do? Get 2 5-stars? I mean, that's you've got to get a lot of points.
Game.
It's a numbers game and it's a talents game. To move from 4 to 3, you got to get a 5-star, maybe 2 5-stars to do so. And so it's tougher. When you're in this 19, 18, 17, 20, you only need one player, one guy to leave, one guy to come, and you can move up a couple spots. So Michigan's the loser here. Looks like Texas A&M is kind of the winner. As we said, they popped up from not even inside the top 20 all the way up to 18 in this ranking. So a little bit of movement here. We're going to see some more coming up.
UCLA there at 17 with Chip Kelly, Florida at 16 as well. Let's go to 15 through 11, Oregon, LSU, USC now at 13, Florida State at 12, and Washington at number 11.
Yeah, I mean, just something to discuss on these classes. LSU was really, counting and banking on that Patrick Surtain Jr. Commitment. That one has got to sting, Cam, because they are defensive back university. They are DBU, and with that being said, losing him is kind of a shot to the recruiting prowess of Coach O at Orgeron. And so he's been a recruiter. He's been maybe one of the best recruiters in college football, and to see his first full class only be at 14, I think is a big disappointment. Surtain could have jumped into potentially the top. LSU could have popped into this top, maybe 10, 11 with getting Surtain's commitment. A top 10 class would have been nice for Coach O to keep the alums happy down there in Baton Rouge. But as such, it doesn't look like they're going to make it unless we see a major flip somewhere that we're not expecting.
All right, that's 15 through 11 there, folks. Let's take a look at 10 through 6. Auburn, Notre Dame. The Sooners are now at number 8. Clemson at 7, Miami at 6. James, if you are Miami officials right now, missing out on Campbell, missing out on Surtain Jr., a couple local kids, how are you feeling?
Well, I'm not feeling too good. I mean, Surtain Jr. is one. I didn't think he was going to go to Miami. I actually thought LSU, but he should have been looking at Miami, of course. Not really getting any of those guys. I think missing out on Campbell, but still sitting there with the top 5, 6, 7 class is you got to be happy. It's only the first full recruiting class under Mark Richt. His recruiting fell off his last few years at Georgia, Cam. I mean, we saw when you're in there for 16, 17, 18 years, sometimes you can get stale a little bit. Maybe you don't go after it as hard as you used to. And Kirby Smart gets in there year 2. He's got the second or best, first best recruiting class maybe in history. So you saw what talent, Mark Richt was kind of leaving on the table there at Georgia. He's revitalized. He's re-energized. They've got certainly a top 10 class. Going to fight it out for a top 5 class here down the stretch.
All right, so there's 10 through 6, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at 5 through 1 here. Penn State, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia.
So Georgia, Cam, back to number 1, baby, right? Georgia is number 1, and I think that Ohio State still is going to have an opportunity. I mean, that commitment of Nick Petit-Frere is the opportunity. I know we've updated the rankings with that commitment, but anything can change. There's a lot of guys that still haven't signed on the dotted line that maybe are still verbals that could potentially flip. So I think these two top, Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia, are going to stay there. I do think Alabama has plenty of opportunity to kind of jump over Texas to get that number 3 spot, but I don't see anybody, unseating these top 4 right now. Maybe in that exact order, the rest of this 2018 National Signing Day. I think that's going to be your top 4. I do think Penn State probably could potentially fall depending on what happens. I do think Clemson has the opportunity to jump up into the top 5. Maybe Oklahoma, Notre Dame outside chance, but it sounds like the guys they were banking on that, Nicholas Petit and a couple others are not going to end up in South Bend. So as such, this is going to be most likely your top 4. We'll see what happens 5 through 10.
You've heard the man, the college football insider, James Yoder, joining the Cam Rogers Show here today on this National Signing Day edition. James is off to work on the wires and keep you guys updated with the latest and greatest in recruiting. Which school are you repping on the Cam Rogers Show here today? Go Bucks all in. Are you a Clemson fan? Miami? Let us know in the comments section. We'll be tracking what you say. I saw some Booner Sooners. I saw some Go Dogs. I'm seeing just SEC in general. So hit me up with your comments. And, of course, we thank you for tuning in to this program here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. We have a lot to get to throughout the second hour. Yes, we are in the second hour of the Cam Rogers Show here today, and it's been a fun and exciting morning with decisions from Patrick Surtain Jr., Tyson Campbell, Andrew Chatfield, Nicholas Petit-Frere. Of course, I will be chatting with him in this hour. Very excited to talk to the number 1 offensive tackle in the nation. So stay tuned for that one. But, of course, in the meantime, we've got one of our great college football analysts, Tom Downey, here on the program. Tom, it's been a busy one for you. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, it's always busy on college football signing day. It is pure chaos.
Absolutely. And you've been tracking, of course, the rankings on 24/7 Sports. How about this historic day from Georgia and Ohio State?
I can't remember a time where it's just been so chaotic, back and forth, back and forth. One team gets it, one team does it. It's been a blast to watch in particular. Like, to watch these two teams shuffle as they go along is really not at all what I expected to see happen here. And yet that's where we're at, because it's just been utter chaos all afternoon.
So we're currently working on the respective conference rankings for everybody out there, so don't you worry. We will get those to you. So tracking some of the big-time stories here in the early going, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Cam Rogers Show. By the way, hit me up with your comments. I'm seeing Willie. I'm seeing John. Little roll tide from class of 2007. Willie, UGA, go Dogs, big Dogs fan there. All right, let's take a look at the Pac-12 rankings here in terms of recruiting. We've got 12 through 9, Arizona State, Oregon State, Arizona at 10, Colorado at 9. Herm Edwards, not a great start, Tom.
No, and that's what kind of jumps out to me, because this is not good for Herm Edwards to have that poor of a class, I think, early on. I think that can still change, but as of right now, this is a poor class for Arizona State. They've lost some big players, and that's not what they want. I mean, this was supposed to be hey, we're going to keep our coordinators and we're going to keep the staff together, just going to bring Herm Edwards in and we're going to recruit well, and they're last in the Pac-12 with only 13 commits.
Not good.
That's a really small class and not great quality either.
Okay, so there's 12 through 9 there. Let's go to 8 through 5. Stanford, Utah, California, and Washington State. What sticks out to you here, Tom?
Well, Utah was actually in outside the top 10 in the Pac-12 until today. They've kind of made a little bit jump up there. They got an extra recruit. Their big guy is 4-star quarterback Jack Tuttle, number 8 pro-style quarterback. I am excited to see what he can do for Utah. They do need some quarterback help. Stanford is also a surprise down there. They do have a couple 4-stars for them to be exact. Michael Wilson, Andres Fox, Thomas Booker, a receiver and 3 defensive end, and 4-star quarterback Jack West, but it's a small class.
Yeah.
14 commits, that's not a good number for Stanford. For them to be 8th in the Pac-12 is really not what we typically expect out of Stanford. Even though the academic requirements do hurt them, they're not there, and we will see what ends up happening, by the way, with Tanner McKee, who's going to be a sign him now, wait 2 years type quarterback.
2020 recruit, essentially.
Yes,
and
it's very strange.
Announcing within the hour. So there's 8 through 5. Let's take a look at the next batch here. The top 4. There's Chip Kelly and UCLA at number 4. Oregon at 3, USC at 2, and there's Washington at number 1, Tom.
So Washington has the better volume here. They actually have 11 4-star recruits. They're just outside the top 10 overall. USC, though, has the quality that you typically like to see. They've got 3 5-star recruits. It is Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is the brother of EQ St. Brown, who wasn't at Notre Dame and has since declared for the NFL draft. The big name, though, maybe overall, is 5-star quarterback J.T. Daniels. He was not supposed to come to USC until next year. He reclassified, enrolled a year early, and now he gets to be at USC and maybe compete to help replace Sam Darnold. And the other big guy is Paula Ie, now Teote, a defensive player who is another 5-star get. So the USC doesn't have the volume that you want to see, but the quality is very much there.
Okay, so those are your Pac-12 recruiting rankings, and we're going to go through every conference here, ladies and gentlemen, to keep you updated with what is happening. So let's take a look at the SEC now. Arkansas, Missouri, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Ole Miss 14 through 10, Tom.
The SEC is often a little bit deceptive because they don't have the super highly ranked in terms of like, oh, they're 13th or whatever. They're 12th in the SEC. Well, Vanderbilt may be 12th in the SEC, but they're actually 38th in the nation. So the SEC, even if you rank low in your class, that doesn't mean that you have a bad group overall. Mississippi State and Ole Miss are both in the top 30. Like this is a very strong class here overall for these programs.
So don't be fooled.
Don't be fooled.
All right, so there's 14 through 10 there in the SEC rankings. Take a look at the next batch, 9 through 5. Mississippi State, Tennessee, South Carolina, Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher, and Florida with Dan Mullen.
Jimbo's making moves today.
Yes, he is.
A&M was barely in the top 25. They've risen into the top 20. They've got a couple different 4-stars. Leon Neal, the safety, Jalen Preston, the receiver, both top 100 recruits, have done very well. They flipped Bobby Brown from Alabama today. A&M is making some nice moves. I don't know if they get in the top 5 in the SEC or the top 15 in the nation, but Jimbo Fisher has really kind of rallied A&M late here after it looked like at the beginning of his tenure at A&M, it was like, oh no, is this more of this FSU class where they didn't have a lot of good guys, but the Aggies have done a good job of getting some momentum and getting going a little bit here and closing relatively well. Tennessee, South Carolina, also in the top 25, and as you mentioned with Florida earlier on the show today, Cam, they've missed out on some key guys.
Yeah, so there's Florida there at number 5. Let's get into the top 4 for the SEC, and it's loaded. Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, and LSU, and of course the one that sticks out, Tom, they had a great early signing period. They're carrying that momentum here today. Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs.
And what Georgia has done is truly incredible. This is a class that in most years, both Georgia and OSU's class are number 1.
Yeah.
But this year, both of these programs have done such a fantastic job of getting high-quality players and getting high volume as well. I'm so impressed by what Georgia has done under Kirby Smart this year. I don't know if they're going to finish number 1. It looks like they're in very good chance there, but they're going to finish at least number 2. If you're a Bulldog fan, you're like, oh yeah, baby, here we go. This is exactly the class that we want because what the Bulldogs have done is wildly impressive to me. I am super impressed by how well they have recruited under Kirby Smart. They've immediately come in and said, hey, we're here to stay, baby.
Join the movement.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Georgia there at number 1. And of course, we are awaiting that highly anticipated interview with Nicholas Petit-Frere, the top offensive tackle in the nation. Looking forward to chatting with him later in the show. So we will get to that. So there's the SEC, folks. Let's get into the ACC. Boston College, Virginia, Duke, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. Boston College East, Tom.
Yeah, this is not a great class for BC. They've been pretty iffy. 22 commits. They do have a 4-star guy. That's offensive guard Finn Durstein. But with Duke, I want to point them out. Only 16 commits. So that's why they're only 12th. If they had the 20s like most teams end up getting, they'd be a little bit higher here. They also have a great name for a quarterback in a recruit, Gunnar Holmberg. If your name is Gunnar as a quarterback, you should have success, in theory.
I would say so. All right, there's 14 through 10 there, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at the next batch here in the ACC recruiting rankings. Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, North Carolina. It was rumored that they could make a big leap today, Tom. Then there's Louisville, NC State.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening here with UNC. They do have some spots for more guys. Their volume isn't all that great either, just 17 guys. But I think UNC, maybe they can jump ahead of an NC State, but I'd be a bit surprised if they snuck in the top 25. Same with all those schools. NC State was in the top 25 to begin the day, but they've been leaped by Maryland and Nebraska of the Big Ten.
Okay, so the Terps are in the top 25 there, and that's a look at the 9 through 5 top ACC recruiting classes. This is the Cam Rogers Show here at Chat Sports Facebook Live. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Cam Rogers alongside Tom Downey. We are awaiting the highly anticipated interview with Nicholas Petit-Frere. Of course, he is going to Ohio State. Looking forward to that conversation. And, of course, we have him waiting. We're going to hit a quick break here, Tom, on the Cam Rogers Show. Coming up on the other side, he will join us live. But in the meantime, we'll flash you guys the top 25 recruiting rankings for 2018, and we will continue to show that graphic and keep you guys updated. This is the Cam Rogers Show. Keep it right here. Folks, and welcome back to the Cam Rogers Show here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. Very excited to have Nicholas Petit-Frere, 5-star offensive tackle, and he's headed to Ohio State. Nick, how we doing, my man?
I'm doing well. You know, it's an exciting day here with all my friends and family and my teammates also signing as well. So it's an exciting day at Berkeley Prep.
Absolutely, and hey, you've made your decision. You know, you can kind of look past that, look ahead now. How does it feel to be a part of Ohio State?
It's an awesome feeling. You know, I just felt like this was the best school for me. So I'm very grateful that they gave me this opportunity for me to go out there and play for their school. So I'm very excited for this chance.
Now, you were deciding among many schools here, so I just got to ask you, how is your stress level? Like, you got Notre Dame in the mix, you got Florida, you got Ohio State. Just into the final days here, was it just really a stressful process, or did you just kind of take a relaxed approach to making your decision?
I mean, it can be stressful, but I've had such a good support staff with my mom, Coach Style, and the rest of the Berkeley community here behind me. So it didn't really feel that bad. You know, I was still excited for me making this decision on Wednesday today. So I'm very excited for this opportunity.
Now, of course, we've talked about on this show, Nick, how the power of Urban Meyer in terms of recruiting is absolutely fantastic. So how was Urban, and of course Greg Schiano too, who's going to remain with Ohio State, able to win you over?
It wasn't really about the coaches. I know coaches coming. Really just about the school. I just really felt like that was the best school for me and everything that I wanted. So, they're amazing people. Coach Meyer's an amazing coach. I'm very excited for him. And Coach Shiano's great too. But, I understand that coaches sometimes come and go. So I'm just excited for the school and being a part of the Ohio State Buckeyes.
And a lot of coaches have been talking to you within the last few months, of course. You have Jim Harbaugh, Brian Kelly, Dan Mullen, all part of that recruiting process for you, Nick. And I want to ask you, how do all those coaches there differ in terms of how they recruit?
They're all amazing recruiters. They all have their own little ways that they do things, but at the very end, they've all done an amazing job recruiting me. They've been very respectful with me and my school, and then my mom, and then just my time as well. So I couldn't ask for a better recruitment process from any of those coaches.
Nick, the new wrinkle, of course, in the recruiting season is, of course, that early signing period, which you did not do. So you wanted to take advantage of the actual National Signing Day today. Why did you want to do that? Did you want to give yourself more time to kind of come to a decision?
It just kind of worked out with how I focus on football. I made a commitment to Berkeley Prep for me to be my best for my senior year, so I didn't really want to take any visits during my senior season. I did take one, but it was still just something I had to do because it just kind of worked out on my schedule. But I try to make sure I focus on my team for the most part. And then going in through November and December was still kind of a trying period because I just started school and I try to focus on that as well. So it just worked out to where my visits ended up in January.
All right, so you've made the decision, Ohio State. So in terms of preparation now, Nick, what is on the docket for you?
Getting in the weight room plan and getting bigger, faster, and stronger any way I can, and just getting ready for June.
Okay, there you have it. And hey, Nick, I got to say, the tape is fantastic. I personally love great offensive line play, and you bring that. It's really fun to watch you. You are headed to Ohio State. And let me ask you, tonight, you celebrating? You going out? What's the plan?
No, I'm going to try to go hit the weight room, and I'm going to hang out with my mom. So maybe Coach Sayo too, so I'm going to hang out with them.
Hey, that is a fantastic answer right there. Nicholas Petit-Frere, of course, he's going to Columbus, joining us live here on the Cam Rogers Show. Nick, really appreciate the time, sir. Enjoy the day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, take care. The #1 tackle in the nation, making his decision here today, Tom, and a huge get for Ohio State.
Oh, absolutely huge, and this is partially why Ohio State's still kind of hanging out in that mix to get that #1 overall spot there.
All right, so of course you see the 2018 recruiting rankings scrolling at the bottom of your screen.
It had OSU, perfect timing.
Yeah, there you go, right at the bottom there here on the Cam Rogers Show. Hour #2 here on National Signing Day. And Tom, we went through some of the, shall we say, conference rankings and talked about the SEC and particularly Georgia. And I also mentioned at the top of my show, in terms of the history of the 24/7 Sports composite, Ohio State and Georgia could have historically good classes.
They're both just as loaded as they come. It's incredible to me to see what both these programs have done. Look, we know OSU is always going to be in the mix for a top 2, top 3, at the very worst top 5 class, kind of like Alabama in that regard. For Georgia to leap in this year, I think is a super impressive statement on what Kirby Smart has done on the field and obviously recruiting off field as well.
Absolutely at that. All right, folks, so we thank you for tuning into this program here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. I am Cam Rogers. That guy right there is Tom Downey. Throw in your comments. Which school are you repping? We are, of course, presented by Man Crates, as you see at the bottom of your screen as well. And we are tracking one big name this hour, Tom. Tanner McKee, of course, that quarterback who was leaning towards Stanford entering today. Essentially a 2020 recruit because he's going on that mission trip for a couple of years. And we are working through the breaking news, and I believe we are getting close to his announcement.
Well, I think we have the announcement here now for you guys in terms of the breaking news bar. Tanner McKee will be going to Stanford. He's committed to Stanford over a bunch of other programs. He just made that announcement now. This is a good get for Stanford. I don't know, again, we don't know when he's going to make an impact because he's going to take that Mormon mission. He committed to Stanford over the likes of BYU and some other big-name programs, Alabama, Texas, A&M, the Huskies as well of Washington. A lot of programs wanted McKee knowing he was not going to come in and make an impact this year or next. He was going to take that Mormon mission and then end up making an impact. So he's an unusual recruit, despite being very highly touted because he's a 4-star guy, highly ranked overall. Now the question is, when does he make that immediate impact? And I'm excited to see what happens with McKee because I don't know what he's going to do long term, because what's he going to be like as a player when he comes back from that mission? That's always the big question mark with these kids.
Can you hit the weight room while you're on that mission, etc.?
You know, we know who he is now, but what does he become after he leaves for a while? Sure. You know, like does he kind of have some getting used to football? Does he need a redshirt year as well? So I think that's the big question there.
So Tanner recently took an official visit to Stanford, during which he met former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Stanford was assumed the heavy favorite going into today, and Tanner named one of 12 finalists for the prestigious Elite 11 quarterback competition this past summer, passed for over 2,000 yards with 23 touchdowns, with only 2 interceptions, and added over 600 rushing yards on an 11.4 yards per carry clip to boot. So a really good season for Tanner, the number 3 ranked pro-style quarterback. Tom, as you're a recruiter here, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to have him at 2020, you kind of use Tanner as somewhat of a placeholder, correct?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it is. Like you don't have to worry about him. I think he's a guy that you say, okay, let's get him for sure, because we can also like get a recruit this year, and that's what Stanford did. They went out and they got Jack West. Jack West can, you know, in theory, be a near-term player. He can be your backup. I don't think he's going to start over. Stanford has their own quarterback right now in KJ Costello. But in a year from now, let's say Costello goes pro earlier, he struggles, whatever, Jack West can compete. Jack West, in theory, is going to be a redshirt sophomore or a junior by the time McKee's ready to go. So even though you brought in 2 quarterbacks, they don't really overlap in terms of when they're supposed to play. Mm-hmm. Although, in theory, McKee, at his age, is ready to play a little bit earlier once he's a freshman.
And by the way, who knows what kind of rules could change by the time 2020 comes around, too.
Exactly. I mean, you could see one of those guys try to leave. So I think McKee picked Stanford, and a big reason why a lot of kids pick Stanford, the academics matter to McKee. And not that it does matter to other players, but with McKee in particular, even if you have to have that 2 years off, you're going to have that great Stanford education as well.
Okay, so there's Tanner. He's going to Stanford. And, of course, he'll be that 2020 commit recruit, however you want to say it, because he will be on that 2-year mission. All right, folks, this is the Cam Rogers Show here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. We are presented by Man Crates. Head on to mancrates.com for fantastic gifts that guys love here on this National Signing Day. I think it's a perfect day to go on mancrates.com and check out the customized barware. Yeah. We've got Texas Longhorns right here.
Yeah, there you go. See, very nice, very fancy. Comes with nuts as well and coasters.
Yep.
Perfect beer.
And a crowbar to pry open that box.
Make you feel like a man.
Yes, it does. Mancrates.com, ladies and gentlemen, they are sponsoring the Cam Rogers Show here today. Let's continue along with our conference rankings. So we went through the ACC a little bit. Here's 14 through 10, Boston College, Virginia, Duke, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. Tom, anything that you could see in terms of movement?
Duke doesn't have great volume. If they can get some more, even if it's just lower-end 3-star guys, I think you'll see them rise, because these rankings are based on A, quality, but quantity also matters. If you get a bunch of players, that'll help you kind of go up the list.
Okay, and there you see Syracuse at number 10. Let's go into the next list here. 9 through 5, Penn State, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Louisville, and NC State. NC State's been creeping into that top 25 total.
They've been hovering around there. They've been hanging out. They were as high as 25. They've kind of fallen back down because Maryland and Nebraska have jumped them. As of right now, they sit at 28th, but it's a solid class for NC State.
And then the next slate here, the top teams in the ACC. Miami at 1, Clemson 2, Florida State 3, Virginia Tech 4. So Miami, despite losing out on Surtain Jr. and Tyson Campbell and Andrew Chatfield, they're there at the top of the list.
Look, Miami has 23 commits, only 1 5-star, 14 4-stars. That's a really good class. Clemson has 16 total. So Clemson doesn't have the volume that would push them up into the top 5. They're number 7 overall right now. But 5 of them are 5-stars. In terms of quality, you have a tough time finding a better quality class for Clemson outside of Georgia and Ohio State. It's the volume that keeps Clemson outside the top 5. It's just not there. But in terms of quality, this is a really, really good class for Clemson.
Okay, so there is Clemson there at number 2.
One note on the Pac-12, we already went through that, but the addition of McKee for Stanford has actually put Stanford from 8 in the Pac-12 into the 5th spot.
So we thought there'd be movement there.
Still not top 25, though. They just don't have the volume either.
Okay. All right, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The ACC recruiting rankings. We're going to take a look at the Big 12 as well and the Big 10. Let's take a look at the Big 10. 14 through 10, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, Purdue, and Indiana.
This is the lower end of the Big Ten. I think in general here, there's just a difference in class. And you see guys like Northwestern, or not guys, teams, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, Purdue, Indiana. These aren't bad classes for those programs, but they're not going to compete with the Ohio States and the Penn States and the Big Tens and all that. So these are kind of the, in general, I think, bottom feeders of the Big Ten. And I don't mean that as a major sign of disrespect. Northwestern, volume here matters. 18 commits, just 1 4-star. Devin O'Rourke, they kept him in state. Top 300 guy, that's the big get for Northwestern. Indiana is 10th because they've got 24 guys, only 1 top 500 though. So volume and quality kind of differs a little bit there. So Northwestern in general is a little bit better than 14th, but they don't have the volume there.
Okay, so 14 through 10 right there in the Big Ten. 9 through 5, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan State. Tom, 6 through 9 are all better football teams as we stand than Maryland, but Maryland's better in the recruiting right now.
Look, recruiting matters and volume matters. Wisconsin does have a 4-star guy in linebacker, Jack Sanborn, which I think is a great name. And, of course, it's a linebacker. It's Wisconsin. Outside of tackles, that's just what they produce up there. Number 9 for Wisconsin, the volume isn't there compared to teams like Iowa. Minnesota's got 26 commits, and they're only 7, which tells you maybe the quality isn't that good. They've got a couple 4-star guys, 2 offensive linemen, and a receiver. A good class for Minnesota. I like what P.J. Fleck does. He's always been a volume guy dating back to his Western Michigan days. Michigan State checks in there at number 6, and yet they're behind like a Maryland. And Maryland has done a great job, Cam. I know you're an alumnus as well. DJ Durkin can do a pretty good job of recruiting. Maryland has risen into the top 25. They're 25th right now. They've got 23 commits. 4 of them are 4-star
Serious
recruits.
volume for Maryland.
And
there.
it's been really good here. The big addition that they ended up getting today, which is I think really helped Maryland overall. They had Jalen Duncan, they had Austin Fontaine, they had Daryl Jones, but Maryland in general this year, I've been very impressed by how well they've done. They went on and they added Ken Montgomery, a cornerback. I don't know if this is as good as Nebraska class, which we'll get to, but this is a solid class for Maryland. If they can hover around that top 25, that's what you want if the Terrapins.
Absolutely, especially with the season that Maryland had, with all the injuries, etc. Really good feelings in College Park right now. Let's get into the top 4 for the Big Ten. There's Nebraska, Tom, you mentioned them. Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State at 1.
If you're a Nebraska fan, you're like, oh man, this is so good. We have done such a fantastic job overall, because they were not in the top 25 when Scott Frost hired. They were very far behind. But ever since that early national signing day period, Nebraska has steadily risen. Now they check in 23rd overall. They're 4th in the Big Ten. And the big guy to watch for Nebraska is a guy that I'm excited to see play probably early in his career. And that is Adrian Martinez. He flipped from Tennessee to Nebraska. He's a quarterback. I think he's going to make a pretty big impact early and often for Nebraska. I wouldn't totally rule him out starting right away as well, because I think he's that level of player.
And then Ohio State, Tom, and just Urban Meyer, the way in which he has been recruiting this season has been absolutely fantastic. I talked about Nicholas Petit-Frere as well, and of course we'll play that interview in the 3rd hour of the Cam Rogers Show. And look, Ohio State there at number 1, really fantastic. They will be battling it out with Georgia for that top spot among everybody in the top 25 rankings. So there is the Big Ten there, Tom.
And I think Penn State, because Ohio State has done such a good job, I think Penn State kind of gets overlooked. This is a really good class for the Nittany Lions. Look, they lost a lot, but they kept Micah Parsons, a 5-star defensive end. They got a 5-star receiver in Justin Shorter. All-purpose back Ricky Slade is a 5-star player as well. This is a good Penn State class. It's not Ohio State level, but this is a top 10 class for Penn State. If they recruit like that every year, they're going to remain in the mix for the Big Ten and the national championship. So I love what Penn State's done. Michigan, I think, in general, thanks to the loss of Otis Reese and some other not great recruiting overall, they are at 19. There's a big difference between the top 2 classes here, Penn State, Ohio State, and then it's kind of everyone else in the Big Ten. Michigan, Nebraska, Maryland you can group together. Maybe throw Michigan State in that group as well. But there is some very large difference in terms of the class rankings here, in terms of the groupings of Tier 1, Penn State, Ohio State. Tier 2 is Michigan, Nebraska, Maryland, and then it's almost everybody else.
All right, so that's a look at the Big Ten in terms of the conference recruiting rankings. We are changing those throughout the day here today on National Signing Day. And Tom,
constantly updated. It's chaos.
It's funny. The early signing period saw nearly 2,000 FBS prospects, the majority of available prospects, sign their national letters of intent. And we thought today would have no excitement, no fun. Well, we've had a lot of excitement and fun
OSU
today.
and Georgia just trading blows to see who can get the number 1 spot.
It's been counterpunch after counterpunch. Let's go into the Big 12 rankings here. 10 through 6, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, and West Virginia.
Disappointing class for Texas Tech, just 17 guys. Kansas State is very much a classic Kansas State class. Their top-ranked guy is dual threat quarterback John Holcomb, a good fit for Kansas State. They like the class. That's always what Kansas State has done. They don't end up ranking all that high, but they end up getting the most out of those players.
All right, let's go into the – oh, go ahead.
Kansas as well. Look, Kansas had a couple four-star guys committed early. They hired a guy from the state of Louisiana to come be a coach. They ended up keeping 2 of their 4-star guys. Kansas got 4-star recruits. What's going on with the world? All-purpose back Anthony Williams and quarterback Corian Harris, both top 300 guys.
Kansas above Kansas State, by the way. Kind of a nice little rivalry win so far.
Kansas State never does well in the recruiting rankings. That's not how they go about their process.
Iowa State at 7 is a little surprising to me with Campbell there as the head coach. And
yeah, it's only 19 guys. So, again, volume matters here. Iowa State at 7, West Virginia at 6. West Virginia's big get was Dante Stills, a top 130 defensive end.
Okay, let's take a look at the top teams in the Big 12 here in our rankings, which have been changed in real time. Texas at 1, Oklahoma at 2, TCU 3, Baylor at 4, Oklahoma State at 5. Baylor has floated into that top 25 range too.
Yeah, they were in the top 25 when we started today's show. They've just fallen out. They're number 26 right now behind Maryland and Virginia Tech. Baylor, the big get for them is Jerry Bohannon, a pretty good framed dual threat quarterback. He can run, he can throw. He is supposed to be the next Baylor quarterback. We'll see how long that ends up lasting here for Baylor. This has been a very impressive class around Matt Rule. And, of course, you know, we might have some potential chaos here if with Matt Rule. You remember, he did interview for the Indianapolis Colts job, and there are reports that the Colts could go back after him after they missed on Josh McDaniels because he made the late decision there. So just monitor the Matt Rule situation at Baylor. It would be a disaster for Baylor or any team that would lose their head coach after signing it, because all those commits would be like, yo, we want out, and Baylor would probably be like, we feel you. We're going to try and let you out there. So just monitor the Rule and Baylor's situation. TCU, another quality class, but the class of the Big 12, once again in the recruiting world, is Oklahoma and Texas. Texas ranks 3rd. Their class is so good.
They're back, Tom. Texas is back.
Oh, dude, they are back in the recruiting world. This is one of the better classes Texas has put together, I think, in quite a while, even though they've had some good ranked classes. Loaded with secondary talent. They've got some big names on the defensive and offensive line kind of late in the process. They had a kid named Luke Brockermeyer, a 3-star recruit who was committed to Rice at offers from the likes of Oregon State, announced last night, hey, I'm going to go walk on to Texas. I'm going to pass on a scholarship somewhere else, and I'm going to go walk on.
Hook 'em.
That's when you know you're recruiting at an elite level there. That's Alabama-esque almost there. You get guys that could go be a scholarship somewhere else, say, you know what? I'm going to go walk on to Texas instead. I'm going to get an academic scholarship, or I'm going to pay my way through. That's impressive.
TCU, pretty darn good class for them, too. On track to sign the highest-rated class in program history. TCU QB signee Justin Rogers, the highest recruit there.
That's the big guy right there. That is definitely the big guy that they're going to monitor.
Huge get.
He might start early because TCU has a big question mark at quarterback.
Okay, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen, the Big 12 recruiting class rankings. This is the Cam Rogers Show here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. We are rolling along hour number 2 of the program, special National Signing Day edition. Cam Rogers, Tom Downey alongside to break down everything that is going down. And we thank you for tuning in right now. I know it's a business day out there. I'm sure all of you are at the office, and probably, Tom, they got the phones right on their desk.
This is not a day where you do work.
Yeah.
This is a day where maybe you do work, but you definitely have this on in the background.
Absolutely.
You're paying attention.
Absolutely. All right, so hey, let's take a look at the updated top 25 rankings. So this is everybody mushed together. Maryland 25, Virginia Tech 24, Nebraska 23, Tennessee 22, TCU at 21. What stands out here?
I see 3. I see Maryland, Nebraska, Tennessee. Those are programs that need to recruit well because they haven't lived up to their own expectations. Maryland wants to be a contender in the Big Ten. We've seen Nebraska also try to be the same way. They've had issues, but Scott Frost has done a fantastic job right away getting some good players in. And then Tennessee right there as well. Tennessee's a big question mark. I want to see how they close this signing day period.
They've been quiet recently.
They've been a little quiet. They've kind of hovered around this spot, but one guy late in the process can get you from 22, 21, can get you all the way up into the top 20 as well, because it's easier, as James said earlier on today's show, easier to make moves up if you're in the 20s or the 30s than it is to make moves inside the top 10.
And the Vols, want to talk about quiet, picked up only one public commitment since early January entering today. So there's Tennessee there at 22. Let's go into the next slate here. So inside the top 20 we go. South Carolina, Michigan, Texas A&M, UCLA, Florida. A lot of new coaches on that graphic, Tom.
Quite a few. I am super impressed with what A&M has done. I thought that they might not finish in the top 25. They went out, they flipped a guy in Bobby Brown who was committed to Alabama.
Huge.
A&M has done a really good job late in the process of making changes, getting guys to commit late to them and make some polls and find a way to put together what, especially with the early signing period, is kind of a muddled class. This was not supposed to be a class that you threw together, that you have time to build. It's kind of okay, who can we get to fill out this class? It's kind of clustered and chaotic. A&M has done a really good job of that. Frankly, so is Florida and UCLA. UCLA, though, out of the top 25 at one point after the national signing period, they're back in the top 20. Those programs there, A&M, UCLA, and Florida, have done a good job of just staying together enough to find a way to get things going well.
The biggest story for Michigan, by the way, as we probably end the day here, will likely be that Otis Reese flip, Tom. Like, that's not good to kind of end your national signing
That's a big
period.
loss for Michigan, and that wasn't fully unexpected, but it's a painful one for them to swallow.
All right, so there's 20 through 16 there, ladies and gentlemen. Let's check in with the next batch here. Heading inside the top 15 we go. Oregon, LSU, USC, Florida State, Washington. Tom, a big story for me entering today. Could we see a big finish from USC? Because, we entered today, the Trojans weren't in the top 10, but their average player rating of 93.58 is actually higher than all of the teams except Ohio State and Georgia.
We've seen this before where some of these Pac-12 schools end up making late pushes because all the kids on the West Coast aren't committing yet.
Yes.
They're not getting up at 7 a.m. to do these commitments. They wait till later in the day. I remember a couple years ago there was Caleb Kelly of Oklahoma, who went to Oklahoma, had a pretty good year this year, was a 5-star recruit, didn't commit till like 5 p.m. Eastern. Because he was on the West Coast. Why would he get up early?
Took his time, yeah.
He took his time. He had all the attention to himself, and he's done a great job. And you can see some late changes for some of those West Coast schools. We'll see that ends up happening, but I like where Oregon is at. I think USC needs more volume. Quality's there. I don't think the numbers are where you want to see them, though.
All right, so there's Florida State and Washington, 12 and 11, respectively. Willie Taggart. So he's out there, and he's in the public with Florida State's faithful. The era for Taggart has been really fantastic. He visited students at FSU Day at the Florida Capitol, and it's interesting because, you had FSU, which was number 64 in the team rankings with just 8 commits when Taggart took over initially in December. So Taggart's been out there interacting with students. He's been out there recruiting. He's done a great job moving Florida State up the rankings. James Foster, Anthony Grant, Trayshawn Harrison are names to watch there for Florida State. What do you make of the Taggart era?
This has been a good close so far for FSU. They found a way to rally. They had nothing going when Jimbo Fisher was there. They did not have a good class. They're up to 20 commits now. I think you can see them kind of jump in the top 10 maybe later in the day when we get to the later hours here and they get another update here. But FSU has done a really good job. This is also what I expected out of Willie Taggart. The man can recruit. He showed that early. He got his one big commit in the early signing day period. They went out and they flipped Jaden Woodby. I am very impressed with what FSU has done. They have pulled in some very nice recruits in this process. They've managed to get some other guys here in the top 200. They landed a 161 overall, Trayshawn Harrison, the athlete, not that long ago. FSU was on the rise. I would not be surprised if at the end of the day they're in the top 10.
All right, well, let's do that, Tom. Let's go inside the top 10 here in our recruiting class rankings. Auburn, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Clemson, Miami. Clemson had a big-time early signing day period for sure.
And I think that we'll start with Auburn and kind of work our way down. With Auburn, Joey Gatewood is the guy.
Yes.
That's the quarterback that Gus Malzahn has said is a little bit like Cam Newton. That's some high praise right there. He's an athlete, 6'4", 232. We'll see if he can develop as a passer. He could be a big guy for Auburn to watch, not next year, but once Jarrett Stidham potentially decides to leave. Notre Dame has put together a very solid class. This is 25 commits right now. 12 of them are 4 stars, including friend of the show, Houston Griffith, their #1 recruit.
Yes.
This is a quality class for Notre Dame. I was a little worried because they lost their D coordinator. I'm like, ooh, could they lose some more pieces here? Ended up being able to maintain a very good class. Brian Kelly needs that going forward if he doesn't want to have a big drop-off in terms of his play from this year to last year, where he had the down year and they kind of picked it back up this season.
The Sooners, they're at number 8, and they have predicated their recruiting resources heavily on the defensive side of the ball, bringing in at least 4-star prospects along that defensive line. And waiting on some signing day decisions as well. But Lincoln Riley, what a job he has done for Oklahoma on the football field, but also in recruiting. Not too bad.
As James Yoder likes to say, he is large game Lincoln no matter what.
There you
Even
go.
though maybe that doesn't flow quite as well as Big Game Bob. But he's done a great job. And I do think him being younger does help him recruit these kids. I think the younger you are, for the most part, you're not gonna have the experience, but I think you're able to connect better with these kids. And I think that's a big deal on that end for sure.
Okay, let's get inside the top 5 here, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Penn State, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia there. We mentioned Penn State earlier in the show today with, the fair share of turnover there with some of their stars and Saquon Barkley and their offensive coordinator, Joe Moorhead, and Mike Gesicki. He's gone as well. He's going to the draft. But Penn State and Jeff Franklin have done a great job. Franklin in his 5th recruiting class in Happy Valley. Of course, that huge signing with Micah Parsons, the 5-star defensive end and 5th-ranked prospect in the nation. Also an early enrollee at Happy Valley, too. So good to have him on campus in the early going as well.
I think it's unfortunate that Penn State is going to get lost in this buzz because, there's Texas, there's Alabama, and so on. This has been a really good class for Penn State. If they can produce a top 5 class here all the time here, I think this is a huge job that James Franklin has done. 3 5-star guys. I love what they've done. Alabama's done a very good job as well. They pulled in Patrick Surtain, which I thought was a huge get, and maybe one of the bigger surprises we've had so far outside of Nick Petit-Frere going to OSU.
Right. We thought Surtain would probably go to LSU. Perhaps there was some thought that maybe he would stay in the Sunshine State and go to Miami. So Alabama, a big win today, getting Surtain Jr. So they're at number 4. They started the day lower, though. We were, at least I was, ready to talk about, has Nick Saban lost his touch in the recruiting process, Tom? And perhaps Kirby Smart is starting to win.
Going out and getting Surtain, I think, kind of ends that. And it's weird that Alabama, man, they're only 4th. This is a bad class for them. Well, maybe not so much. This is still a really good class for Alabama in the end. I like what they've done. Even though they're not going to be the number 1 class like they've been for years now, I don't know how you can be too upset with what we've seen today.
Okay, so Surtain Jr. is the good news for Alabama. We got some bad news, though. Some breaking news here on the Cam Rogers Show. Quay Walker has flipped from Alabama to Georgia.
The rich get richer.
From Saban to Kirby, Tom. Wow.
This is a big get for Georgia. Their linebacking class also looks incredibly stacked. Otis Reese, Adam Anderson, now Quay Walker. Walker's a top 100 commit. I think top 50 as well. I have to double check that, though. But Alabama, this is going to drop them down the rankings a little bit here, so we'll update that later on in the show, later in this next hour. But Alabama was number 4 when they were factoring in the addition of Quay Walker. Without Quay Walker, they're going to drop out of the top 5. They're going to fall to number 6. Miami and Penn State will leap ahead of them. So Alabama back out of the top 5 here. But this is a big, big get for Georgia. If you're the Bulldogs and you're a fan, how are you not just popping champagne? Are you like, this is an incredible class for UGA?
Give me a go Bulldogs, ladies and gentlemen, because they are absolutely killing it today. They killed it all the way back in the early signing period as well. And you got to wonder now, Tom, did that move the needle to kind of lock in Georgia as that top school as we end the day?
It's going to be really close. Ohio State, I think, can still find a way to make some moves here, but Georgia is up to 25 commitments. Their lead has expanded. I don't know if it fully locks in Georgia, but OSU is going to have to find a way to get another 5-star guy.
Yep.
And I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So as of right now, we're not going to declare it as a win. We're not going to have
We're not going to call the race.
We're not going to call the race. There's going to be no Dewey defeats Truman here. But Georgia has all of the poll leads here. Like, they are in fantastic shape right now. I fully expect the Bulldogs to finish number 1. I think you'll see Ohio State finish number 2. And oh, by the way, Texas, we didn't get a chance to talk about them, added another 4-star receiver. They are going to, I think, lock into that number 3 spot with Alabama falling.
There you see Quay Walker there, 4-star recruit, number 31 overall, the number 2 outside linebacker from Georgia. So flipped from Alabama to remain in his home state here. And it's really interesting, Tom, because you're seeing a recruiting battle now between Georgia and Alabama. Of course, Georgia and Ohio State as well, but I'm talking about the SEC specifically. And you also had a battle in the College Football Playoff National Championship game. Georgia and Alabama.
You're going to see Georgia and Alabama going back and forth on the field, off the field for years to come, especially as long as Nick Saban's there.
So this
is a loaded class for Georgia. This is just absurd to me. Like, this class is so freaking good for Georgia.
We didn't mention Tyson Campbell either. Huge get there. He's going to Georgia.
This Georgia class is almost unfair. Like, you're sitting here, they already have, first off, they've got 9 early enrollees, including Justin Fields, Zamir White, Cade Mays, Brenton Cox, all 5-star guys. They've got guys like Jamari Saylor, Adam Anderson, top 20 guys that have already signed their letters of intent. And then today alone, they landed Tyson Campbell, number 12, the number 2 cornerback in the nation, and they went out and they pulled Quay Walker in, a top 31 recruit, or 31st overall recruit, a 4-star linebacker. They flipped Otis Reese as well. This class is stacked if you're Georgia. Like, it's such a good class that you're going to see the guys make impacts next year, even though Georgia just went to the national championship game. Like, this is a really, really good class for Georgia. It is a tough loss for Alabama. I think a little bit expected on that end. But if you're Georgia, you're like, oh, man, this class is so good. Like,
if you're Kirby Smart, you're licking your chops,
You're like, oh, this class is this is the class for Georgia. Like, that's what they want. So to get Quay Walker is just icing on the cake for what we think will end up being their number 1 class in the nation. We're not going to call the race yet, but it's pretty darn close right there.
So you have Jamari Salyer, you mentioned him, Adam Anderson, additional 5-star players who have signed, 4 5-star players already enrolled. I have a feeling that offensive line for Georgia is in pretty darn good shape. They have some major, major pickups in that recruiting class. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the breaking news there with Quay Walker. We got a weigh-in for everybody tuning in right now. Who is the best recruiter out there? Give us a hashtag Urban for Urban Meyer, hashtag Saban for Nick Saban, hashtag Kirby for Kirby Smart, hashtag Dabo for Dabo Sweeney. And hey, throw in your own hashtag if that option or the option you're looking for is not up there on your screen. And we'll be tracking your comments. A lot of Bulldogs fans tuning in right now. Some Roll Tides checking in the comments section as well. So, Tom, those are 4 good recruiters.
You know, I'll throw out this here for Urban Meyer because this just came across the wire. I saw we're not going to do too much on it because he's out to the top 200. But outside linebacker Javonte Jean-Baptiste has committed to Ohio State, a 4-star, 219 overall. It is not enough, though, to get Ohio State ahead of Georgia. So they still remain number 2, but they expand that lead that they have over Texas right now. So my guess is, at the end of the day, we're going to see Georgia number 1, OSU number 2, Texas at number 3. As for best recruiter, there is no wrong answer up here.
Exactly.
Like, you just take your pick. I am a huge fan of what Dabo Sweeney has done. I think if you look at the level of the program itself versus an Ohio State, an Alabama, a Clemson, or a Georgia, historically, I'd say Clemson is the least of those. And yet, year in, year out, Clemson has recruited with Urban Meyer, with Saban, with Kirby Smart this year. He has done a fantastic job. So as great as Urban, Saban, Smart, even Tom Herman as well here, I think what we've seen from Dabo Sweeney since he's taken over has been the most impressive job for me. I saw a comment in there about Tom Herman. He's not that far behind either.
No, absolutely not.
Like, all of those guys are incredible, incredible recruiting coaches.
All right, folks, keep throwing in your comments here on the Cam Rogers Show. Hour number 2, wrapping it up here, a couple minutes left in the program. Tom, the dust has somewhat settled a little bit here, so we can kind of sit back and just kind of recap all
Settled for 5 minutes.
Exactly. Recap here everything that we have seen. So Patrick Surtain Jr., huge get for Alabama. Tyson Campbell, Georgia. Andrew Chatfield, Florida. So some of those schools making some big-time splashes in the early going.
And I think that's what you want to see if you're a fan of these schools. Let's start with maybe the biggest name of today,
Sure.
Patrick Surtain. There'd been a late buzz like, oh, he's going to go to Alabama. Look kind of like LSU, like Miami or Florida was in the mix as well. Clemson made a late push, but in the end, he goes to Alabama. I'm excited to see how he fares. And then you got, of course, Georgia. They're just balling out again with Tyson Campbell because Georgia's getting everyone apparently.
And Tyson feels very good about his ability to perhaps play week 1. You know, right in the 2018 campaign for Georgia. There's Chatfield there for Florida playing in that 3-4 defense. And then Nicholas Petit-Frere, friend of the program here on the Cam Rogers Show. Really fun interview. Great kid and a great player at that out of Tampa. He is going to Ohio State. And, of course, Tanner McKee, a name we were watching in the 11 o'clock Eastern hour, going to Stanford, essentially a 2020 recruit at that because, of course, he's going to be on his mission trip.
I'm excited to see what happens with him. I really am because I don't know what's going to be his long-term output and how he comes back after that mission trip. Otis Reese there, a big flip as well.
Yes.
Georgia got all of the linebackers this year. Otis Reese, Quay Walker we'll get to in just a second, and Adam Anderson as well. Just a loaded class for Georgia. We can't speak highly enough of how great Georgia has done today. And really this entire process, it's been nothing short of incredible.
So tomorrow morning, everybody by the water coolers in the office, et cetera, are going to be talking about what a class Georgia has put together, historically speaking.
If you live in the South, if you live in Ohio,
Yes.
you're like, OSU are the best class. What are you talking about,
that's a
man?
good point. That's a good point. Maybe from a third-party perspective, if you're not so far deep into fanhood for one specific team, that's something to kind of think about there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping up the Cam Rogers Show here. Cam Rogers alongside Tom Downey. Hour number 3, starting up in a matter of moments. My interview with Nicholas Petit-Frere, Ohio State signee. He's going to Columbus. Let's roll it.